Our nation is in trouble. I'm talking about our government and our culture. And the only one answer to what we are facing is Jesus. Jesus said in John chapter 12, verse 32, and when I am lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. We need to lift up Jesus in our nation and across the world. So we will be considering the politics and cultural issues of our day in light of God's Word. So today, let's consider this. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Consider This. I'm your host, Keith Allen, and the purpose of this show is to lift up Jesus Christ in our nation and across the world. I say this every week. This is not an opinion show, although you're going to hear mine, but the only opinion that really matters is God's. So for today, let's consider this: confusion in the enemy's camp. And we'll get into what that is in just a moment. But let's just start. I'm going to jump in with two scriptures here. Let's start with James chapter 3 and verse 16. For where you have envy and self-ambition, there you will find confusion and every evil practice. Get that. Where there is self-ambition, you will find confusion and evil practice. And then 2 Corinthians 14 verse 33 says, for God is not a God of disorder. For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace, as in all the congregation of the Lord's people. So the other day I was talking with several people about all the things that really have happened over the last 4 weeks or so. And that's like the starting point for a lot of people. You go back to, when the presidential debate was on the 27th of June last month. And that's when, and anybody that was watching it saw that Joe Biden just completely crashed and burned. And, if you're not one that follows politics, you don't see Joe Biden very often. Even if that's the case, if you had anybody that had seen that, there's no way you would say, well, I think he was okay before that. And maybe that just started that day. No, everybody knew Joe Biden had these problems for a long time. It's not like he woke up that morning and that's what happened to him. And for those of us that follow politics, I can tell you there's been a decline for years. There were many people that were surprised that they even ran him for president. But let me just tell you, you'll hear me talk about things like the deep state, and I'm not going to go into what the deep state is here. Some of us understand there's not only the level of, you got the Democratic Party that you see right now, then you see about as deep down as we tend to go on this show, as you get the, Barack Obama and the Clintons and the maybe Susan Rice, Eric Holder, of that old administration. Well, when you go to the deep state, it's even below that. It's the money that's supplying those folks. And let me tell you, a lot of the deep state is who's making a lot of these decisions, especially in the Democratic Party. So, some people will say, well, Keith, that's just your opinion, etc. All I'm going to tell you is it's not just my opinion. What it is, and I say at the beginning of every show, the only opinion that matters is God's, and you're going to hear mine. But when I put opinions out like that, I can tell you it's based on a lot of deductive reasoning, somebody that's followed politics for quite some time, and also just critical thinking skills. You add these 6 or 7 things and here's what you get. You can usually figure it out, especially when you get as deep into this stuff for as long as I do. So just understand that's where I'm coming from. And when I say Joe Biden was selected, it wasn't just that Joe Biden wanted to run. I will tell you, they picked Joe Biden. The
President Obama, who's still highly involved in the Democratic Party, the deep state, all those folks chose Joe Biden. And you do have to ask, well, why would they pick him? Keith, you say he's flawed. Why would they pick Joe Biden? Was it because he had this great mind? Was it because he's this great influencer? Was it because he had the ability to get both sides of the aisle working together? It really wasn't any of that, because the truth is, Joe Biden has never been known as a mental giant in Congress. What he has, and he's never been known as somebody that's a great influencer. What he has been known as is somebody that's been there for a really, really long time. He was elected to the Senate when he was 29 years old. He is a staple. He's been there for a long time. So he's got a lot of relationships. It's not so much that he gets things done. It's he's managed to survive. Maybe that's the best way I can put it. To say he was politically savvy, I would tell you he's not. So now, I want to just put some facts out there, because when they say, well, he was picked, right? So why would Obama pick him? Maybe they were friends. No, he wasn't. In fact, I'm not going to quote a bunch of articles. For anybody that wants to check up on any of this stuff, there's a real interesting article on Politico. So you can go to Politico.com. On 8/14 of 2020, there was an article titled, "What Obama Really Thought About Joe Biden." And so let me tell you some of the things, the facts that I pulled out of this article. Number one, Joe Biden has always held it against Obama that because Obama supported Hillary Clinton for president in the 2016 runoff. And I think anybody that follows politics remembers that Barack Obama supported Hillary Clinton over Joe Biden, and what happened? She lost. But prior to that, Joe Biden was a big Barack Obama defender. He was with Obama on everything. And you say, well, why? Well, Joe Biden wanted to be president. He's always wanted to be president. And Barack Obama was his ticket. But here's the problem. Obama looked down on Joe. He liked Hillary. He looked down on Joe Biden. And there's a couple reasons, but I mean, just think of this. There's some differences. So Obama, Columbia University, Harvard Law School grad. I mean, I'm obviously not a Barack Obama fan, but if you were to ask me, is the guy intelligent? Can he hold good conversation, make good arguments? Is he articulate? The answer to all those questions is yes. Is he a polished, savvy politician? The answer is yes, whether you like him or not. I happen not to like his politics. I don't like his arguments, but you can't argue that the man is educated, sounds educated, and articulates a good argument. Then you got very similar to him, you've got Hillary Clinton, who graduated from Yale Law School. And Hillary Clinton, even whether she was in any office she held when she was Secretary of State, let me tell you, Hillary Clinton was the person that when she's going to a meeting, she had the biggest binder, and she was the one that read all her stuff 3 times. I mean, she came prepared. Again, very intelligent lady. There's a whole bunch of things I don't like about Hillary Clinton, but you can't say she's not intelligent. You can't say that she's not well studied. She is. So there's some similarities with Obama and Clinton, but remember, Obama took Clinton out for the 2008 election. So there's some bad blood there as well. In fact, he gave her consolation prize, which was the Secretary of State on his Secretary of State position on his cabinet. And then you have Joe Biden. So Joe Biden, this is public knowledge. He flunked in 3rd grade. He had to do 3rd grade over again. In his first 3 semesters at the University of Delaware, he got all C's and D's the first 3 semesters, with the exception of physical education. And then he got an F, a failing mark in ROTC. That's famous. I mean, that's factual information. You can check me on that. And then I think many of you have probably heard the quote. It was several years ago now, but it's still alive and well, where I don't know what the context was, but Barack Obama said, quote unquote, excuse my language, I'm not going to swear, but I'm going to make the reference so you guys are going to understand it. But Obama's famous quote was, "Don't ever underestimate the ability of Joe Biden to F things up." And he didn't say F things up, if you know what I mean. Joe Biden was not a favorite of Obama's. Obama was not a favorite of Joe Biden's. So Joe was picked for 2020 because they could not risk running Hillary again. Remember, 2008 against Barack Obama, she was so unlikable. Her likability was so bad. And then when she ran against Trump, her likability was so bad. I mean, yeah, she made some mistakes. She called half the country deplorables, etc. But her big issue, she had a likability problem. She still does, much the same as Kamala Harris, quite frankly. I'm not going to talk about that on this show. But they couldn't risk running her. Joe was the safe bet that Obama and the deep state could run and control. Now, I want you to think about this. Since Joe Biden, a week ago or so, got on national TV in the Oval Office, he gets on and tells the world, really, because everybody's watching, he tells the world, I'm not going to run for president of the United States in November this year. I'm going to do what's best for my party and the country. So they had teed this thing up like we were going to finally hear why he wasn't running. He never did tell us why he wasn't running. Well, the reason he wasn't running is they forced him out. They forced him out. The big donors, which is part of that deep state, they forced him out. He had no choice. If he wouldn't have left, there would have been a 25th Amendment clause and he'd have been out. But when he made that statement, and then you started listening to all these politicians, all these media folks with we all love Joe Biden. He was a great president. He's going to go down in history as one of the best presidents ever. Let me tell you, I heard that so many times. At one point I asked my wife, I said, get me a bucket. I need to vomit. Let me tell you something. This guy was, and for anybody that listens to President Trump in his rallies, President Trump says, you could take the 10 worst presidents, put them all together, and Joe Biden is worse than all of them combined. And he is absolutely right. But let me continue with this context. So, because there's more. The Obamas, first of all, they've also never liked Kamala. And let's not miss this. You can see how Jill and Joe Biden portray this love affair with Kamala. Let me remind you something. When Joe Biden was running for president, and he was on national TV having a debate, Kamala Harris calls Joe Biden, and I'll say calls Jill Biden's husband, calls him a racist on live TV. Now, do you think that there's any love lost between those two? Let me tell you something. Joe and Kamala spent very little time together in this 3.5-year president VP situation. They spent very little time together. In fact, and it was known in DC that these two were not very close. And all I can tell you is, if Joe, if he truly on his own, if he picked her as his VP, then let me tell you, he's dumber than any of us would have thought. Let me tell you something. He was told to pick her. Plus, he had said publicly, I'm going to pick a woman of color as my VP. I'm going to put a woman of color on the Supreme Court. She did. He didn't say, I'm going to pick the best and the brightest What he said is, I'm going to pick a woman of color. And that's what he did. So now that you have all that context, Obamas don't like the Bidens, vice versa. The Bidens don't like Kamala, and vice versa. Obama beat Hillary out of the nomination. There's some bad blood there. In other words, none of them really like each other. So why does it look like it does and sound like it does? Because when you look right now on the TV and on internet and wherever you get your media, you have this facade of everybody loves Joe Biden, everybody loves Kamala, the Bidens love Kamala, the Bidens love Joe. I mean, it was such a false photo op. How do you think it happened that the media was right there filming when Kamala Harris gets the phone call from Michelle Obama, who starts the call by saying, "Oh, my girl, I just had to call you." Let me tell you something. When she gave her endorsement, everybody saw that. Why does that look like everybody's so friendly and they love each other? Let me tell you why. Because the Democratic Party and those people pulling the strings, that's what they want you to see. They are trying to deceive you and me. What they really thought, I mean, you just think about it, where this was going prior to the debate. What they really thought, they thought they could slide Joe Biden in under the radar. If they could have just got past this debate, they really thought that maybe he'd be okay. They probably knew it wasn't going to be great, but usually presidential debates, it's not like things, whether you win or lose. In fact, most of the time when they're over, you have the right saying our guy won and the left saying our guy won. And that's what happened the last time Biden and Trump debated. But the truth is, it was a disaster that the Democrats were not expecting. So you not only had that, but think about all the lawfare. So 94 criminal charges against Donald Trump. And they all started falling apart, and they're still falling apart. And then the Supreme Court ruling in favor of Trump on presidential immunity. They thought that Hunter Biden's laptop story was buried. So all this stuff started working against the left. And I mean, you think about it, it wasn't just, that's where we started to see everything blow up. But go back to March 7th, when there was the State of the Union address. Anybody that watched that critically, I mean, you had the left saying, "Oh, he was great, Biden was great." Let me tell you something. The people that are really pulling the strings behind the scenes, nobody thought that was great. He came off, I'll just say it, he came off as a crazy old man, crazy angry old man, kind of like get off my lawn kind of guy. He's screaming at people. He's pointing at the Supreme Court saying, I'm going to overrule what you're doing. I mean, it was not a good show. So, that debate on the 27th of June might have been the nail in the coffin, but again, trust me, things started behind the scenes a lot further back than June 27th. I promise you there was already a plan B, a plan C somewhere. So why did the media and the Democratic Party and even some of those folk that were close to Joe Biden, they believed that Joe was not going to pull out of the running for president. Even Joe Biden himself didn't believe he was going to pull out of the I started to doubt. I thought maybe he's not gonna. So the people closest around him, even Kamala, all of them were like, no, he's not pulling out. He's going to run. He's going to run. Clyburn out of South Carolina, he's going to run. He's going to run. I mean, everybody was saying he's going to run. And then, I mean, you even had, I call them the loudmouths with the small brains, the AOCs of the world, the Nancy Pelosi's of the world. Even they were bullhorning it out to everybody that Joe's not going anywhere and we're all with Joe. And then just like that, he's out, right? So why in the world would they have put that out there? Why in the world would they put that out there? Let me tell you why. Because the Obamas and the deep state, they wanted you, they wanted me, they wanted the American people, they wanted the Republican Party and the Trump team to believe that Joe Biden was running, and it worked. So no matter what the Trump team says, because they said, we're prepared for anybody, we're preparing for anybody. And there's a lot of smart people on that team, there's a lot of money there, and I'm sure they did have some things in place. They were preparing, but trust me, they were preparing for Joe Biden, and that's who they wanted. That was kind of like the 2-foot putt. That was going to be an easy one. But let me tell you, here's the simple high-level plan that they had in place. Their plan was, let's drag it out as long as you can so that everybody believes that Biden is in. That's what they're prepared for. And when no one expects it, after the public and the media are showing all this stuff about Joe Biden, when no one expects it, force old Joe out and put in another candidate. Even a bad candidate, Kamala. Put in another candidate, because what that'll do, that immediately energizes the left, because now they feel like, well, we were going to lose with Joe, and truthfully and wrongly stated, they believed, the Democratic public, I'm not talking about people making the decisions, I'm talking about the public, the people out here, the U.S. voters that wanted Joe out. They believed that they were losing to Trump because of Joe's cognitive decline. The truth is they were losing because of the Democratic Party's platform. They were losing because of the economy. They're losing because of the border. They're losing because of what's going on the world stage. They're losing because of all the craziness we have going from a culture standpoint with the men and women's sports. And the world is kind of out of control. And that's why they're losing. But they needed to make it about personality. So you can take a Kamala Harris, who's a person of color, that gets the faction on the left that really wants the DEI craziness. It satisfies them, and it settles the public down. Hey, at least it's not Joe. And then it causes confusion, and it was intentional. I'm telling you, they're causing confusion with the Republicans, where many of us are saying, well, yeah, but why Kamala? I mean, are they really going to run her? Is she going to make it past the August 19th Democratic Convention? There brings a lot of confusion, and that is intentional. They want to cause confusion, and guess what? They're right in there with the media, is holding hands with them right along the way. It's interesting. I wrote a quote down earlier today because I was watching, I was just scrolling through the media on my one of my devices, just looking at the news. I'm watching this Israel thing pretty tight. For those of you that hear me, make sure you keep the peace of Jerusalem in your prayers. There's a lot going on over there right now. But I'm going through there, and I saw just, several hours ago that the chair for Netflix just committed $7 million to the Kamala Harris PAC. And I thought, boy, they're spending that kind of money. And it's like, no, they're not spending that kind of money. People don't spend $7 million. They invest $7 million. When they give $7 million and you have $150 million that went to Kamala Harris for president accounts for her campaign in 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever it was, that's not $150 million of spent money. That's $150 million invested. Let me tell you something. They want something for that money. And a lot of it we'll never know. The general public will never know. Let me tell you something. The Obamas, the Clintons, And the Harrises, let me tell you, they all have, this is what keeps them together. They all have one common enemy, and that's Donald Trump. And the truth is, it's you. Donald Trump is just the front man fighting. But remember what I started with, James 3:16, where you have self-ambition, you will have confusion. And so what they want to confuse us. But what's happened is all these things that they thought they had under wraps. They thought they had Trump dead to rights. They thought he was done. If nothing else, he was going to be so tied up in court, nobody would vote for him. Every time they indicted him, his polls went up. Let me tell you something. When the left wants you to believe these things, they're trying to cause confusion for everybody. But what's happening is God is bringing the confusion back to their own camp. And I was in 2 Chronicles the other day, and I just thought it was interesting. If you go to the 2 Chronicles chapter 20, and I would just say read the whole chapter, but at least through chapter 23. But I'm just going to read verse 1 to you. 2 Chronicles chapter 1, and this is a story about King Jehoshaphat. He's a good king from the southern kingdom. Verse 1 says, "And it came to pass after this also that the children of Moab, the children of Ammon, and with them others besides, which was the Edomites, came against Jehoshaphat to battle." So you got all these factions, these three different factions, and they're going to come and they are going to take out Jehoshaphat and the children of Israel, God's people. And in this context, I'm going to say we're God's people. But when you get down to verse 20, say 22 and 23, you get to see how it ended. And the evil people that were coming against God's people, it's a great story. Take the time to read it if you get the chance. But two of the factions decided that something happened where there was confusion in the camp, and these two, the Moabites and the Ammonites, they start fighting with the Edomites, and then somehow all three of them were fighting, and there was such confusion in the camp that all of them were wiped out, all the enemies of Israel, and God's people didn't even have to lift a finger, and the enemy was defeated. Because just think about what I said last week when Proverbs 26 verse 27, where for whoever digs a pit will fall in it. Whoever rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. That's what happened to the Democratic Party over the last 6 months, I'm going to say at least. They were truly trying to sow all this confusion, and God rolled it back on their own camp. And now there's so much infighting. There's infighting that you and I aren't even hearing about. But there's all kinds of confusion going on in the enemy's camp right now. But you think about this. When you read the story, here's what you're going to find. The people of God, when they went into battle, they knew these three factions were coming at them. Here's what they did. They went into worship. They went into prayer, and they went into truly calling on the Lord, and God brought confusion into the enemy's camp. That is what He's doing in this season in our world right now. So I end these shows lately. I've been ending them with challenges. Here's the challenge I'm gonna give you again today. You got to pray for our nation. You have to pray for our nation. I was in Lamentations this morning. I was just, the book of the prophet Jeremiah. The book of Lamentations, there's 5 laments or lamentations, individual laments that the prophet goes through because of what's happened to God's people and God's land. And I look at that as, the United States of America, we're not much different. And the same way as these people rejected God for so long, that God finally gave up on that land and he put his people in bondage. I wrote down a quote this morning in church. I was just meditating on it. And I thought, man, how far does our world, how far does this country have to fall before the Christians rise? As the body of Christ, we have got to be willing to stand up and do our part. And I told you this last week, don't believe what you're going to see. Don't believe what you're going to hear over the next several months. Let me tell you something. I believe they're cooking up something big that when people hear it, they're going to go, oh my gosh, really? Donald Trump, maybe I was wrong about this guy. Even Christians, if you are not 100% committed, let me tell you something. You can get off track. I'm telling you, don't trust what you're going to hear. It's so interesting. You can look at polls right now and you hear the media telling you, oh, they're neck and neck. It's neck and neck with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Let me tell you, it's not neck and neck. It's what they're telling you. There's actually polls out there that are showing Trump at 47 and Kamala at 42. But let me tell you, there's a deep state and there's a lot of money. And a lot of times what you're going to see on the news, I don't care what station, that includes Fox. There's a lot of things that you're going to see. The only reason you're seeing them is because that's what they've decided to show you. Do not listen and look at everything you see and hear. Don't believe it. And then I say this a lot, but every one of us has a purpose in the kingdom of God, and especially in this season. These are trying times right now. Seek the Lord. Make sure that your vessel is clean. Determine, what is my purpose? What does God have me to do in this season, this critical season? And then November 5th is right around the corner. I was just talking to somebody the other day. She told me, I don't vote. And I gave her all the reasons why, as a Christian, you need to vote. And there's a lot of reasons, but if you just want a couple of big ones, let me tell you something. As a Christian, if you are the person that checks the box, says I'm a Christian, you cannot vote for a party or a person that is for the murder of innocent life, abortion. You just can't. It's not scriptural. If you're a Christian, you check that box, you cannot vote for a person or a party that says, I believe in gay marriage. I believe in transgenderism. I believe a little boy thinks he's a little girl. We can do surgery and we can give them puberty blockers. And let me tell you something, all this stuff is not only sick, it's evil. As a Christian, we're actually told in the book of Ephesians that we are to expose evil. And you can't just look past it. You can't say, I'm not voting. You have to vote for a party and persons that line up closest with the Word of God. November 5th is right around the corner. Lastly, I know I went a little long today, but most weeks before I get on here, Judy will say, hey, here's a couple things you ought to talk about. You ought to tell them this. And so I start writing these things in the corner of so you can see that right in the corner of my paper. And I put Judy's Corner. I said, this time I'm going to remember to say it. Two things. I thought they were actually pretty darn good. She said to me this morning, she said, hey, think about it. It's so bad that the left wants so bad this DEI, there's women in everything, but it's so important to have a woman president or VP or whatever. And she says, well, they spend most of the time saying you can't determine what a woman is. They don't even know what a woman is, but that's who they want as a president. And then I kind of referenced this a little bit of what's, maybe I didn't, but for anybody that saw the Olympics, the opening of the Olympics in Paris, what a disaster that was, where they made a mockery of the Last Supper. And we had the First Lady, Jill Biden, big picture of her on one of the news sites saying that Jill Biden applauds the opening of the Paris Olympic Games. Total shame. Anyway, until next week, let me just give you, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok. View our podcast on YouTube and Rumble. And please like, share, comment, subscribe. I know there's several of you out there that watch it every week religiously. I love it. But please, please, please like it, and please, please comment. It helps us. Also, you can go right to our website, considerthispodcast.net, N-E-T. If you get on there, you can hit our swag. There's a button there for our swag available on our website. We have coffee cups, we have t-shirts, hoodies, hats, all kinds of goodies on there for small donations. You can go directly to our website at that considerthispodcast.net or considerthisrgv.com. And if you want to reach out to us on email, via email, k.allen@considerthispodcast.net. Thanks for hanging with me today, and we will see you next week. God bless.